You wanted a performance. Welcome to the main event. I always thought my relationship would end with a whimper, not with a Valentine's dinner that turned into a three-ring circus. My name is Danny Rodriguez, and at 29, I'd become the kind of guy who operates heavy machinery by day and pours drinks by night, all while my girlfriend treated me like the third wheel in my own life. Heavy equipment operator by trade, weekend bartender by choice. The construction sites around Austin paid my bills, but the steakhouse bar taught me how to read people. 4 years in the Army Corps of Engineers had given me a foundation in logistics, problem solving, and the kind of patience that comes from defusing actual bombs. But nothing in my military training had prepared me for the emotional minefield I was about to step into. Ashley Martinez, my girlfriend of 3 years, had evolved from the sweet marketing coordinator I'd fallen for into a real estate social climber with champagne tastes and beer budget expectations. These days, she spent more time at luxury property showcases than talking to me about anything that didn't involve marble countertops or walk-in closets. The woman who used to get excited about barbecue joints and dive bars now turned her nose up at anything that didn't have valet parking. The text that changed everything came while I was taking a break from running the excavator on a downtown development project. My phone buzzed against my hard hat. "Danny, I made reservations at Romano's for Valentine's. Can't wait for our romantic evening together." Simple enough. Romano's was expensive, but Ashley had been working extra hours lately, and I figured she deserved something nice. I'd been saving up anyway, putting aside money from my bartending shifts for what I hoped might be an engagement ring fund. 3 years felt like enough time to know if someone was the one, and despite her recent attitude changes, I still thought Ashley might be mine. Except when I got home that night, covered in dust and diesel fumes from a 12-hour shift, Ashley was on the phone with someone, giggling like a teenager. I could hear her voice through the thin walls of her apartment as I climbed the stairs. "Oh, Felix, you're so funny. Yes, 7 o'clock. Don't be late." Felix Anderson, the work husband, commercial real estate broker with a $1,000 smile and a $5,000 suit. Everything I wasn't, smooth, polished, and swimming in commission checks from million-dollar property deals. I'd met him exactly once at Ashley's company Christmas party, where he'd spent the entire evening explaining why a commercial real estate was the future of wealth building, while looking at me like I was a particularly slow child who couldn't understand basic economics. I stood outside Ashley's door for a moment, key in hand, trying to process what I'd just heard. Felix was coming to our Valentine's dinner? That didn't make sense. Unless... I pushed the thought away and knocked instead of using my key. Better to give her a chance to explain. "Danny." Ashley opened the door with a smile that seemed a little too bright, a little too practiced. "You're early. I was just finishing up some work calls." "Work calls with Felix?" "Oh, that." She waved her hand dismissively. "Poor guy's going through a rough divorce. He's been pretty down lately, so I told him he could join us for dinner tomorrow, just to cheer him up. You don't mind, do you?" I studied her face. In the Army, we'd learned to read situations quickly. Your life sometimes depended on spotting the lie that could get you killed. Ashley's expression had that same forced casualness I'd seen on soldiers who were about to confess they'd lost their equipment or forgotten their watch duty. "He's going through a divorce?" I asked. "Just finalized last week. He's been really struggling with being alone. I thought a nice dinner with friends might help." "Friends, right?" I nodded slowly, filing away the information. "That's thoughtful of you. I knew you'd understand. You're so sweet about these things." She kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. New perfume. Perfume I'd never smelled on her before. I showered off the day's dirt and tried to shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong. Ashley had been distant lately, working late, attending more networking events than a politician during election season. But I'd been patient. The military had taught me that good intelligence took time to gather, and rushing to conclusions could get you into trouble. Still, as I lay in Ashley's bed that night, listening to her breathe beside me, I couldn't stop thinking about that phone call, the way she'd laughed, the way she'd said Felix's name. In my experience, people didn't giggle like teenagers when talking to colleagues who were struggling with being alone. Valentine's Day arrived with February's bite in the air. Austin might be in Texas, but winter still had teeth, and the morning was gray and cold as I finished up an early shift on a residential foundation project. I'd arranged to leave work at 3, giving me time to go home, clean up, and stop by the flower shop before meeting Ashley. The flower shop was one of those small family operations that had somehow survived the corporate takeover of everything else. Mrs. Thompson, the owner, knew me by name after 3 years of Valentine's anniversaries and apology bouquets. "The usual pink roses, Danny?" she asked as I walked in. "Yes, ma'am, 2 dozen this time." I was feeling generous, despite the weird feeling in my gut about dinner. Special occasion? Valentine's dinner, though apparently it's become a group event. Mrs. Thompson raised an eyebrow, but didn't pry. Small business owners in working-class neighborhoods learned not to ask too many questions about people's personal lives. Well, pink roses are always appropriate, regardless of the company. I picked up the roses and headed home to my duplex in the neighborhood, where I'd lived since getting out of the Army. The place wasn't much to look at, a small 2-bedroom with a postage stamp yard and neighbors who worked with their hands for a living. But it was mine, bought with my VA loan and 4 years of military savings. No mortgage payments to a landlord, no permission needed to hang pictures on the walls. I even wore the dress shirt Ashley had bought me for Christmas, the one that made me look more professional, according to her. Navy blue, crisp collar, the kind of shirt that cost more than I usually spend on clothes, but made her happy when I wore it to her work functions. Romano's Steakhouse sat on the edge of downtown Austin, the kind of place that charged $40 for a steak I could grill better at home. But it was Ashley's favorite, and I was trying to be the boyfriend she deserved, even if some days I wondered if she was trying to be the girlfriend I deserved. The hostess, a young woman with the kind of practiced smile that came from dealing with difficult customers, led me through the dimly lit dining room toward what I assumed would be a table for 2. That's when I saw it. 3 place settings, 3 water glasses, 3 sets of silverware arranged around a table that was definitely meant for more than a romantic dinner for 2. My stomach dropped like a bucket down a well, and I felt that familiar tightness in my chest that I'd learned to recognize during my Army days. It was the same feeling I'd gotten right before we'd discovered IEDs on patrol, that moment when your brain processed information faster than your conscious mind could keep up. "Oh, there you are," Ashley's voice carried across the restaurant as she walked in with Felix Anderson trailing behind her like a peacock in an Armani suit. She looked stunning, I had to admit. Red dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. Hair done up in that complicated style that took her 2 hours and cost more than I made in a day. She looked like she was going to a business dinner, not a romantic Valentine's evening with her boyfriend. "Felix, this is Danny, my boyfriend." "Danny, you remember Felix from the Christmas party." I remembered Felix. Hard to forget a guy who'd spent an entire evening explaining why commercial real estate was the future of wealth building while drinking top-shelf whiskey and name-dropping clients like he was reading from Forbes magazine. He was exactly the kind of guy who made working-class people feel small without even trying. "Hey, buddy." Felix extended his hand with that practiced broker's smile, the kind that probably closed million-dollar deals, but felt as genuine as a $3 bill. "Hope you don't mind me crashing your romantic dinner. Ashley thought I could use the company since my divorce finalized last week." Mind? I minded about as much as I'd mind finding a rattlesnake in my lunchbox. But Ashley was already sliding into her chair, leaving me to figure out how a romantic dinner for 2 had become a charity case for 3. The way she positioned herself, I noticed, put Felix directly across from her and me, off to the side, like I was the third wheel at my own Valentine's dinner. "Ashley mentioned you needed cheering up," I said, taking my seat and trying to process what was happening. Years of bartending had taught me to read room dynamics, and this room felt wrong in every possible way. "Sorry about your divorce." "Thanks, man. It's been rough. Really rough. But Ashley's been incredible, helping me get through it. She's got such a caring heart, you know? Really understands what it's like to support someone through difficult times." The way he said caring heart while looking at Ashley made my teeth clench. I'd learned to read micro-expressions from years of bartending, watching for customers who were about to cause trouble or start fights. Felix Anderson was trouble in an expensive package, and he was looking at my girlfriend the way a hungry man looks at a steak dinner. "Wine?" Felix was already signaling the waiter, with the confidence of someone who'd never worried about money in his life. "I insist on buying tonight. It's the least I can do for you. To letting me tag along on your special evening." Interesting. Most divorced guys I knew were watching their finances, especially right after paying lawyer fees and splitting assets. Felix was throwing around money at a restaurant that charged $50 for a bottle of wine I could get at the gas station for 10. Either his divorce had been very friendly, or he wasn't as financially devastated as he claimed. "You really don't have to," I started, but Felix waved me off. "Nonsense. I'm grateful for the company. Besides, I just closed a big deal last week. Commercial property downtown. 7 figures. He said it casually, but his eyes were on Ashley when he said it, and I saw her reaction. Interest, appreciation. The kind of look she used to give me when I'd surprise her with something special, but hadn't given me in months. As the evening progressed, I did what I did best. I watched, really watched. Felix knew Ashley's wine preferences better than I did. He knew she hated mushrooms, loved rare steak, and always ordered dessert even when she claimed to be full. When she laughed at his stories, and she laughed a lot, throwing her head back in that genuine way that used to be reserved for me, she touched his arm. Light touches, but frequent. When she talked to me, she checked her phone. The conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream. They talked about property values, about market trends, about mutual acquaintances in the real estate world. Ashley hung on every word, asking intelligent questions that showed she'd been learning about commercial real estate from somewhere. Given that her job was marketing residential properties, that somewhere was obviously Felix. "You know what's interesting about the Austin market right now?" Felix was saying, cutting into his $40 ribeye with the precision of a surgeon. "The commercial sector is absolutely exploding. Residential is fine, but commercial, that's where the real money is. Ashley's been picking it up incredibly fast. She's got a natural instinct for it." Ashley beamed at the compliment, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not jealousy exactly, more like recognition. I'd seen this dynamic before, during my bartending shifts. The confident older man, the ambitious younger woman, the awkward boyfriend who suddenly didn't fit into the conversation anymore. "Maybe I should get my commercial license," Ashley said, and it was the first time all evening that she'd expressed a personal ambition that didn't involve our relationship or our future together. "You absolutely should. I'd be happy to mentor you, show you the ropes, introduce you to the right people." Felix's smile was all teeth and confidence. "The market's hot right now. Perfect timing for someone with your drive. Mentor, right?" I'd heard that song before, usually from guys who were interested in mentoring attractive women in very specific ways. The breaking point came when I excused myself to the bathroom and overheard Felix on a call in the hallway near the restrooms. He was standing with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear, voice low, but not quite low enough. "Yeah, tonight's the night," he was saying. "She's finally ready to make the jump. Been working on this for months. Her boyfriend's a nice enough guy, but he's got no ambition, you know? Blue collar through and through. She deserves better than someone who's going to stay at the same level forever." I stood there in the restaurant hallway, still holding the pink roses I'd brought for Ashley, listening to my girlfriend's work husband plan my replacement like I was a broken piece of machinery that needed to be traded in for a newer model. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I stood there for another 30 seconds, listening to Felix wrap up his conversation with promises to close the deal tonight and finally get her to see what she's worth. When he hung up and turned around, I was already walking back toward the dining room, my mind racing with military precision. Information first, analysis second, action third. That's how we'd operated in the Corps, and it had kept me alive through 2 deployments. The same principles applied here, even if the enemy wore expensive suits instead of enemy uniforms. When I returned to the table, they were huddled together over Ashley's phone, looking at property listings. The intimate way their heads were bent together, the casual way Felix's hand rested on the back of Ashley's chair. It all painted a picture I'd been too trusting to see clearly before. "Oh, Danny!" Ashley's voice was bright with forced enthusiasm when she noticed me approaching. "Felix is showing me this amazing condo downtown, the one with the rooftop pool. It's incredible what you can get for the money if you know the right people." "Sounds expensive," I said, settling back into my chair and picking up my water glass. My hands were steady, which surprised me. The Army had taught me to function under pressure, but I'd never expected to need those skills at a Valentine's dinner. "Well, that's where dual incomes come in handy," Felix replied with a smirk that made me want to rearrange his perfectly straight teeth. "Right investment, right partner, right timing. Ashley understands the value of thinking bigger than just month-to-month rent payments." The implication was clear. I was the month-to-month guy. Felix was the investment in the future. Ashley was nodding along like she was hearing the gospel truth instead of a sales pitch designed to separate her from her current life. Investment properties are interesting, I said carefully. How long have you been building your portfolio, Felix? Oh, a few years now. Started small, worked my way up. Ashley's been helping me research some potential acquisitions lately. She's got a great eye for market trends. Ashley beamed at the praise, and I filed away another piece of information. She'd been helping him research properties. That meant late nights, private meetings, shared goals that didn't include me. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of expensive wine and uncomfortable conversation. Ashley and Felix talked about commercial real estate like it was a religion, and I was the atheist at the revival meeting. Every story Felix told painted him as the successful mentor, and Ashley as the eager student. I was just the guy who paid for her car insurance and brought her pink roses. When the check came, Felix made a show of paying it with a black credit card that probably had a higher limit than my annual salary. My treat, he insisted, for friends. That night, after dropping Ashley off at her apartment, she claimed she was too tired for me to stay over, which was a first for Valentine's Day. I drove to my duplex feeling like I'd been sucker punched by reality. I sat in my kitchen, drinking a beer and staring at the pink roses Ashley had barely acknowledged. The house felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through her eyes for the first time. Small, modest. The home of a man who operated heavy machinery for a living instead of closing million-dollar deals. But as I sat there in my working-class kitchen, something else kicked in. The same analytical mind that had helped me solve logistical nightmares in the Army and defuse literal explosive situations. Ashley and Felix thought they were playing chess while I played checkers, but they'd forgotten something important. I'd been trained to think tactically under pressure. Next morning, I called in sick to the construction site for the first time in 2 years and drove to the county recorder's office. Public records are beautiful things when you know how to read them, and 4 years as an Army Corps engineer had taught me exactly how bureaucracy worked and where the important information lived. Felix Anderson owned 3 properties in Austin, according to the records. Not bad for a guy going through what he claimed was an expensive divorce. More interesting was the timeline of his acquisitions. 2 of the properties had been purchased in the last 8 months, right around the time Ashley started working late and attending networking events. Even more interesting was the fact that Ashley Martinez was listed as co-owner on 2 of them. I sat in my truck in the courthouse parking lot, staring at the documents I'd printed out. Ashley and Felix had been business partners for months. They owned property together. They'd been planning a financial future while I was saving up for an engagement ring and dreaming about our wedding. The betrayal cut deep, but underneath the hurt was something colder and more useful. Anger. The focused kind of anger that had gotten me through basic training and combat deployments. The kind that made men like me dangerous when we finally decided to stop being nice. I spent the afternoon at Murphy's Tavern, the bar where I worked weekends. My sister Chloe was setting up for the evening shift, and she'd been in the service industry long enough to develop a sixth sense about liars, cheaters, and people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. "You look like someone shot your dog," she said, not looking up from the glasses she was polishing. "Worse, I think my girlfriend's been playing me for months." Chloe stopped polishing and gave me her full attention. At 31, she'd seen every kind of relationship drama that Austin had to offer. She'd also inherited the same Rodriguez family trait that had made me good at defusing bombs, the ability to see patterns that other people missed. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The Valentine's dinner, the property records, the phone conversation, the way Ashley and Felix looked at each other like they were sharing secrets I wasn't smart enough to understand. "You want to know what I think?" Chloe said when I finished. "I think your girl's been shopping for an upgrade. This Felix guy's been promising her a lifestyle you can't provide, and last night was her way of introducing you to your replacement. So what do I do?" Chloe smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. She'd inherited another Rodriguez family trait. We didn't like being played for fools. "You do what we do best in this family, little brother. You outwork them." The plan came together over the next week like a construction project, with each phase building on the last. First, I leveraged my connections in the construction industry. Austin was booming, and every major development needed permits, inspections, and the kind of cooperation that only came from knowing the right people in the right places. Felix Anderson was trying to close a major deal, according to the conversations I'd overheard. A luxury shopping complex on the outskirts of town called Austin Gateway Plaza. The kind of development that would net him a seven-figure commission if everything went smoothly. According to the public filings I'd researched, the project was already months behind schedule and millions over budget. It was about to get much worse. I made a few calls to guys I'd worked with over the years, union friends who knew which inspectors were sticklers for code compliance, former Army buddies who'd gone into municipal engineering, the kind of people who could ask uncomfortable questions about soil testing, environmental impact studies, and permit compliance without raising suspicions. "Hey, Rodriguez," said Tommy Martinez, a city inspector I'd known since high school. "You said this Austin Gateway project might have some issues?" "Just want to make sure everything's up to code," I replied. "You know how these big developers sometimes cut corners to save time and money?" Tommy laughed. "Brother, you don't have to convince me. I'll take a real close look at their permits. Real close." Suddenly, Felix's big project was facing unexpected delays, environmental concerns that required additional studies, permit issues that needed clarification, foundation inspections that revealed irregularities requiring expensive remediation, the kind of bureaucratic nightmares that could stretch a 6-month project into a 2-year legal battle. Next, I leveraged my weekend bartending network. Austin's professional class was smaller than most people realized, and they all drank at the same handful of upscale bars. Murphy's Tavern catered to a working-class crowd, but I knew bartenders at every high-end establishment in the city. Information flowed through the service industry like water through a broken dam. "You know Felix Anderson?" I asked Maria Santos, who worked at the rooftop bar where Austin's real estate elite gathered for happy hour. "The commercial broker? Yeah, why?" "Just heard some interesting things about his business practices. Client funds going missing, deals falling through at the last minute. Might want to keep your ears open." Nothing illegal, of course, just enough whispered concern to make potential clients nervous. Reputation was everything in real estate, and once doubt crept in, it spread like wildfire. But the real masterstroke was simpler than any elaborate scheme. I just started paying attention to the details Ashley thought I was too stupid to notice. Like the credit card statement that arrived in her mailbox when I was dropping off her forgotten lunch at work, a couple spa package for 2, booked for the Saturday after Valentine's. A spa package that definitely hadn't included me. Like the joint checking account Ashley thought I didn't know about, discovered when I noticed her real bank statements were different from the ones she showed me. An account funded with regular deposits from A&F Properties LLC, Ashley and Felix's shell company. Like the lease agreement for a downtown condo, I found tucked into her real estate marketing materials. A lease signed by both Ashley Martinez and Felix Anderson, dated 3 weeks in the future. They weren't just planning to be together. They'd been together for months, building a shared financial future, while I paid for dinner dates and weekend getaways like a chump who didn't understand what was happening right in front of his face. The confrontation came exactly 2 weeks after the Valentine's dinner disaster, when Ashley announced she needed to talk about us over coffee at the trendy cafe near her office. "Danny, I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, stirring her $15 artisanal latte with the kind of careful concentration that meant she'd rehearsed this conversation. "I think we've grown in different directions." "Different directions," I repeated, setting down my regular coffee that cost $3 and tasted better than her fancy drink. "I've been offered an opportunity. Felix thinks I have real potential in commercial real estate. He's offered to mentor me, help me get my license, maybe even bring me on as a partner eventually." "Partner," I said. "It's a chance to really make something of myself, Danny, to build a career instead of just having a job. You understand, right? You've always been supportive of my ambitions." I nodded thoughtfully, then pulled out the manila folder I'd brought with me and set it on the cafe table between us. "Before you make any big decisions, I thought you should see this." Ashley's face went pale as I opened the folder and spread out the documents like I was reviewing blueprints on a job site. Property records showing her co-ownership with Felix, bank statements from their joint account, the spa reservation, the condo lease. "What is this?" she whispered. "This is your real relationship with Felix Anderson. The one you've been building for the past 8 months while I was working double shifts to save money for our future. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The confident woman who'd been planning to break up with me had suddenly become someone caught in a lie, so big she couldn't find her way out. Danny, I can explain. No need. I already called Elena Anderson. Ashley's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. What? Felix's wife, the one he's supposedly divorced from. Turns out their divorce isn't final yet. In fact, Elena's been trying to reconcile with him for months, ever since she found out about his gambling problem and the debt he's been hiding from her. I leaned back in my chair, watching Ashley process this information. Elena's a nurse practitioner, by the way. Smart woman. She also happens to control the joint accounts that Felix has been using to fund your little real estate empire. Funny thing about married couples going through contested divorces. They can't make major financial decisions without court approval. The color had completely drained from Ashley's face. That's not possible. Felix said a lot of things, none of them true. I closed the folder and stood up. Elena was very interested to learn about Felix's new business partnership and his plans to leave town with his investment partner once his big development deal closed. I left Ashley sitting in that expensive cafe, staring at the evidence of her own naive greed. The next hour was a masterclass in watching someone's carefully constructed fantasy collapse in real time. Ashley tried anger first, accusing me of violating her privacy and destroying her future. Then came the tears, followed by desperate bargaining about how we could work through this together. Finally, she landed on the kind of frantic reasoning that comes from someone whose entire worldview has just been demolished. You don't understand, she kept saying. Felix and I weren't trying to hurt you. We connected professionally. We have the same goals, the same vision for success. The same vision for success, I repeated. Is that what you call stealing money from joint accounts to buy property with your boyfriend while lying to your actual boyfriend about working late? It wasn't stealing. It was investing. Felix said we could triple our money within 2 years if we move fast on the right opportunities. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Ashley had always been ambitious, but she'd never been particularly good at seeing through smooth talkers. Felix had promised her a lifestyle upgrade, and she'd been willing to sacrifice everything honest in her life to get it. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the text messages I'd been exchanging with Elena Anderson. Elena's filing for an emergency injunction to freeze all of Felix's assets pending their divorce proceedings. That includes the properties you think you co-own. Ashley's face went white as printer paper. She's also reporting the joint account to the IRS as unreported income, since neither of you filed the proper partnership paperwork. Turns out Elena's not just a nurse practitioner, she's also got a degree in accounting. I stood up and put on my jacket, leaving Ashley sitting at the cafe table like someone had just told her the world was ending. In a way, I guess her world was ending. The future she'd been planning with Felix Anderson was built on lies, gambling debts, and money that belonged to someone else. Within a week, the dominoes fell exactly as I'd predicted. Felix's big development deal died in a maze of permit challenges and environmental reviews that would take years to resolve. His reputation in Austin's professional circles became toxic overnight as word spread about questionable business practices and client complaints. Elena Anderson's lawyer had frozen every account Felix had access to, leaving him with nothing but mounting legal bills and a very angry soon-to-be ex-wife who controlled all their legitimate assets. Ashley tried calling me dozens of times that first week, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails about how we needed to talk, how she'd made a mistake, how she was sorry for everything. I listened to exactly none of them. The military had taught me that once you've identified the enemy, you don't give them intelligence about your position. 3 weeks after Valentine's Day, Chloe called me at work with news that made my day. Your girl Ashley came by the bar last night, she said, drunk off her ass, crying about how her life fell apart. Apparently, Felix skipped town and stuck her with the legal bills for all their business ventures. She wanted to know if you'd take her back. What did you tell her? I told her you were dating someone new, a nice elementary school teacher who appreciates men who work honest jobs and don't lie about their financial situations. I wasn't actually dating anyone yet, but I appreciated Chloe's creativity. Felix Anderson's story had an even better ending. Elena decided to take him back after all, but only after he'd signed a post-nuptial agreement giving her complete control of their finances and requiring him to attend gambling addiction counseling. The last I heard, he was selling insurance in suburban Houston, as far from Austin's real estate scene as he could get, while still making enough money to pay his wife back for the mess he'd created. As for me, I kept my duplex, my job, and my dignity. The Army had taught me that the best battles are won before the enemy knows they're fighting. Construction work had taught me that solid foundations matter more than flashy facades. And bartending had taught me that people reveal their true selves when they think nobody important is watching. 6 months after Valentine's Day, I did start dating again. Not an elementary school teacher, though Chloe's story wasn't far off. Lisa was a veterinarian I met when I brought a stray dog I'd found at a construction site to her clinic. She drove a 10-year-old Honda, lived in a modest apartment, and thought my duplex was charming instead of beneath her potential. More importantly, she understood that a man's worth wasn't measured by his salary or his ability to close million-dollar deals. She appreciated the fact that I built things instead of just talking about building things. She laughed at my construction site stories and didn't mind that my hands were always slightly stained with dirt and motor oil. Ashley sent me one final text message 3 months after our cafe confrontation. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday." I read it while taking a break from operating a bulldozer, clearing ground for a new affordable housing development. Honest work, building homes for working families who deserve solid construction and fair prices. I deleted the message without responding. Some foundations, once cracked, aren't worth repairing. You see, the thing about being underestimated is that it gives you all the advantages. People like Felix and Ashley think guys like me are just muscle and machinery, that we don't understand their sophisticated games of social climbing and financial manipulation. They forget that the same skills that build buildings and read difficult customers also work pretty well for dismantling carefully constructed lies. The best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or dramatic confrontations. It's simply refusing to play by rules that were rigged against you from the start. It's using the tools you have instead of wishing for the tools they have. And sometimes it's just letting gravity do what gravity does best, bringing down anything that isn't built on solid ground. Felix wanted Ashley. Ashley wanted Felix's lifestyle. They got exactly what they deserved, each other's problems, and all the debt that came with their champagne dreams and beer budget reality. Me, I'm building something better, something honest, something that'll last longer than a commercial real estate commission or a social media fantasy. And I'm building it with my own 2 hands, just like I always have. Danny Rodriguez, signing off. Class dismissed.